the twin suns of the world of Rian rose high above the hills, throwing long golden light over the stone homes of the village. Life in the settlement began with the sound of the morning bell. Farmers walked to the fields, traders prepared their stalls, and children laughed as they chased one another between the pathways. Among them all, one figure stood taller than the rest. Her name was Nara. Nara was unlike the others of her people. While most of her kin were slim and graceful, she was broad-shouldered and strong. Her height made her tower above even the tallest man of her village. Her steps were heavier, her hands larger, her voice deeper. From childhood, these traits had made her different. Some whispered behind her back, saying she was too big to be graceful, too large to be gentle, too different to be loved. Nara learned to live with those whispers. She kept her head high and her voice calm, but inside, she carried the heavy weight of loneliness. She had tried to join in dances when she was younger, but partners had refused her. She had tried to laugh with the other girls, but they had smiled only when she walked away. In time, she chose silence. She worked hard in the fields, lifted stones for the builders, and guarded the village walls when trouble came. Her strength was useful, but never celebrated. To her people, she was more a tool than a woman. On this day, as the suns rose higher, Nara stood by the water well with a bucket in her hand. She watched the families gather and saw the joy on their faces. A young couple passed by, walking close, hands linked together. The sight made Nara's chest ache. She turned away, carrying her water back to her home at the edge of the settlement. Her home was simple, with walls of stone and a roof of woven branches. It was quiet inside, as always. She sat for a moment and let the stillness surround her. She wondered, as she often did, if there was a place beyond her world where someone would not see her as too big, but simply as herself. These thoughts came often at night, but in the light of morning, they felt like dreams that could never be true. Her people valued beauty in softness, and they believed love belonged only to those who fit their measure of grace. Nara, with her strong frame, was treated as if she did not belong in such a world. She had no anger for them, only sadness. She had saved lives before, when wild beasts had come down from the hills, yet even then, the praise had been given in hushed tones, as if to admit her worth would shame the others. As the day went on, the village prepared for visitors. Strange lights had been seen in the sky the night before. The elders said travelers from the stars would be arriving. Nara listened quietly as the village buzzed with excitement. Traders prepared gifts, children spoke of wonders they hoped to see, and elders debated what terms of trade might be agreed upon. For Nara, it was different. She felt no eagerness, only caution. Outsiders might see her the same way her people did. If her own kin thought her unworthy, why would strangers think any better of her? She stayed near the village walls as the suns lowered in the sky. At last, the visitors came. A great silver ship descended slowly through the clouds, its bright surface shining under the suns. The villagers gasped and cheered as the ground trembled when the ship landed in the open plain. From its side, a door opened and figures stepped out. They were smaller than most of her kind, with lighter frames and strange clothing. Their skin carried many shades, their eyes were sharp, and their movements seemed full of purpose. These were the humans, the ones spoken of in the old tales of wandering travelers. The village gathered to greet them. Nara remained a little apart, watching quietly. She had no wish to stand among the crowd, where whispers would surely rise again if anyone noticed her. Yet even from a distance, she felt the air change. It was as if something had shifted when the humans arrived, though she could not name what it was. As the elders stepped forward to speak with the visitors, Nara turned her gaze upward to the silver ship, its great form resting on the grasslands. For a moment, she imagined what it would be like to step inside, to leave her world behind, to search for a place where no one called her too big. But such thoughts, she told herself, were only dreams. She pulled her cloak around her shoulders and began to walk away. Still, she did not notice that among the humans, one pair of eyes had already found her. A young man stood a little behind the others, and his gaze followed the tall figure as she walked back toward her lonely home. Unlike the villagers, he did not see someone too big. He saw strength, and something more, something he could not yet name. The evening sun spread its red light across the village as the humans walked among the people of Rainer. The air was full of voices, laughter, and questions. Children ran around the humans, pointing at their strange clothes and curious tools. Traders opened baskets of fruits and woven cloth, hoping to show their best to the visitors. The elders spoke with wide smiles, asking about trade, knowledge, and friendship. Nara stood near the outer path, her tall frame hidden partly behind a stone pillar. She watched from the shadows as her people welcomed the humans with cheer. She did not step forward, for she knew the moment she joined the crowd, the whispers would begin again. She had heard them enough times in her life. Still, she was curious. She studied the humans closely. They were smaller than her people, yet they carried themselves with confidence. Their steps were quick, their eyes bright, and their voices warm. One of them, a young man named Rian, seemed less interested in the traders and more interested in observing the village itself. His gaze moved across the homes, the fields beyond, and finally to the figures of the villagers. It was then that his eyes found Nara. She stiffened when she realized he was looking at her. For a moment, she thought he would turn away as most did. Instead, he offered a small smile. It was not the kind of smile that carried mockery. It was simple, open, and honest. Nara felt her chest tighten. She quickly lowered her gaze and pulled her cloak tighter, hoping to disappear. But Rian did not look away. Something about the tall figure caught his attention. He had seen many faces in his travels, yet none like hers. He noticed the way she stood apart, not out of pride but as if she was used to being alone. He decided to step closer. The crowd began to thin as the humans spoke with the elders near the main square. Rian slipped away quietly and walked toward the path where Nara stood. She saw him coming and hesitated. Part of her wished to leave, to avoid another moment of disappointment. Yet another part of her, small but stubborn, told her to wait. When he reached her, Rian stopped at a respectful distance. His voice was calm when he spoke. "You stand apart," he said softly, "but you see everything." Nara blinked, unsure how to answer. Most would begin by pointing out her height or strength. His words were different. She studied him for a long moment before speaking. "I am used to the edge of gatherings," she replied, her voice low. "It is quieter here." Rian nodded as if he understood. "Sometimes the edge is where the truth can be seen best." Nara tilted her head, curious despite herself. No one had ever spoken to her in such a way. She had expected laughter, yet there was none in his tone. Only respect. "You are not afraid of me," she said slowly. "Why should I be afraid?" Rian asked. "You are strong." "Strong is not frightening. Strong can also mean safe." The words touched something deep inside her. She had been called strong before, but always in a way that meant she was too much, too large, too different. Never had someone spoken of strength as safety. Nara's lips parted slightly, but she found no reply. Instead, she turned her gaze back to the square where her people still gathered. Rian followed her gaze, then looked back at her. "They seem happy to meet us," he said, "but I think you are not certain." Nara hesitated, then answered honestly. "I do not know what you will bring. My people love visitors for the gifts they carry. But gifts do not last. When they are gone, whispers remain." Rian tilted his head, as if trying to understand more. "Whispers about you." She fell silent. For a moment she thought she had said too much. Her chest tightened again, and she prepared to end the talk. but when she glanced at him, she saw no judgment in his eyes. Only patience. Yes, she admitted at last. Whispers about me. Rian looked at her for a long moment. Then perhaps, he said quietly, it is time someone spoke louder than the whispers. The words surprised her. She turned her head sharply to see if he was mocking her, but his face remained calm and steady. For the first time in many seasons, she felt a spark of warmth in her chest. Before she could answer, the bell in the village rang, calling all to gather for the evening meal. The elders invited the humans to join the feast, and the crowd moved toward the large fire pit where food was already prepared. Nara stepped back, ready to return to her home. She did not wish to sit among the villagers while the whispers grew again. But as she turned, she heard Rian's voice behind her. "Will you sit at the feast?" he asked gently. She shook her head. "The edge is better for me." Rian gave a small smile. "Then I will sit at the edge too." For a moment, Nara stood frozen. No one had ever chosen to sit with her before. She did not know how to respond. Yet when he walked beside her toward the edge of the fire circle, she allowed it. The whispers came, as she knew they would, but this time they felt softer. For at her side sat someone who did not see her as too big, but simply as herself. The night air of Rainer was cool beneath the twin moons. The villagers gathered around the great fire pit, their voices full of cheer as food and music filled the air. Plates of roasted roots, fruits, and spiced bread were passed around. The humans tasted the dishes with curiosity, some smiling, others politely hiding their surprise at the strong flavors. Nara sat at the farthest edge of the circle, her tall frame half in shadow. It was her usual place, where she could see but not be seen too much. She expected to spend the evening alone, as she always had, but Rian had chosen to sit beside her. He ate quietly, not forcing conversation, but his presence felt steady, like a calm flame beside her. The villagers whispered, as Nara knew they would. Some looked at her with raised brows, wondering why a human would sit with the outcast. She lowered her gaze, waiting for Rian to notice and move away. Yet he stayed. When he caught her glancing at him, he simply smiled and continued eating, as if it was the most natural thing in the world to sit at her side. After a while, Rian broke the silence. "Your people play fine music," he said, nodding toward the small group of musicians near the fire. The soft tones of string instruments blended with the beat of drums. "It sounds like the stories of rivers." Nara lifted her head slightly. "That is what it is meant to sound like. The first rivers of our world, carrying life across the land. The music honors them." Rian's eyes lit with interest. "Will you tell me more about it?" She hesitated. Few had ever asked her to explain anything, much less about her people's traditions. Slowly, she began to speak of the old songs, of how they were sung at planting time and during births, how the rhythm guided the farmers in their work. Rian listened closely, nodding, asking questions. His attention was steady and real. The longer she spoke, the lighter Nara's chest began to feel. She had grown used to silence, but tonight her voice carried across the cool night air, and someone listened without judgment. When the music ended, the villagers clapped, and the musicians bowed. Rian leaned closer and whispered, "You speak with more strength than the music itself. Do your people not hear it?" Nara shook her head. "They do not wish to hear me. To them I am only a shadow of what a woman should be." Rian frowned. "Then they are blind." The words startled her. She turned to look at him, expecting to see mockery, but his gaze was clear and serious. No one had ever spoken like that for her. Heat rose to her cheeks, and she quickly looked away, not trusting her voice. The feast continued with laughter and stories. Children danced near the fire, their steps fast and playful. The humans clapped along, enjoying the sight. But even among the joy, Nara felt the usual distance from her people. The whispers returned, drifting like smoke through the night. Too big, someone muttered. Even the human must be curious, nothing more. Nara lowered her head, the familiar sting of shame pressing against her heart. She wished Rian had not chosen to sit with her. If he heard these whispers, perhaps he too would change his mind. But then she heard his voice again, soft but firm. Let them talk. Words are light as dust. They vanish when the wind comes. Nara's eyes lifted. You do not understand. I have lived with these whispers all my life. They do not vanish. Rian met her gaze, steady and unwavering. Then let me speak louder than the whispers. She stared at him, struck silent by the strength in his words. For a long moment, the noise of the feast faded from her ears, and only his face remained clear before her. His eyes did not carry pity, only a strange kind of respect. The firelight flickered across her features, and she wondered what he truly saw when he looked at her. Did he see the same too large figure her people mocked, or did he see something different she did not dare ask? When the feast came to an end, the villagers returned to their homes, their laughter echoing through the night. Nara stood, pulling her cloak tight around her shoulders. She expected Rian to return to his people, yet he walked beside her as she made her way toward her stone home at the edge of the village. At her door, she paused and finally spoke. Why do you walk with me? Rian looked up at her with calm eyes. Because you walk alone. And I think no one should have to walk alone every night. Her breath caught. She opened her mouth to reply but found no words. No one had ever said such a thing to her. After a long pause, she nodded slightly and stepped inside her home. Rian gave a small bow before turning back toward the center of the village. But as he walked away, Nara's heart felt strangely lighter. For the first time in many years, she did not feel completely unseen. The next morning came quietly. The suns rose above the hills, and the village began its daily rhythm. Farmers walked to the fields, children hurried to lessons, and traders opened their stalls. Yet beneath the surface of routine, a quiet tension lingered. The humans had brought tools, gifts, and words of friendship, but not everyone in the village trusted outsiders. Some welcomed the humans with open arms, while others whispered fears of change. Nara worked as she always did, carrying baskets of stone for a new wall being built at the northern side of the settlement. Her strength made the work easier for others, though they rarely thanked her openly. She moved with steady steps, her mind still remembering Rian's words from the night before. Let me speak louder than the whispers. Those words stayed in her thoughts like a song she could not forget. By midday, the ground began to tremble. A strange, deep rumble echoed from the hills. Farmers dropped their tools, traders paused, and children stopped their games. The rumble grew into a roar, and then the beast appeared. It was larger than any creature the village had seen in many seasons. Its body was covered in dark scales, and its long claws tore the ground as it moved. Its eyes glowed with wild hunger, and its roar shook the very stones of the walls. Panic spread through the people. Mothers grabbed their children, traders ran for shelter, and the elders shouted for guards to defend the village. Nara did not run. Her heart beat faster, but she stood firm. She had faced beasts before, though never one so fierce. Around her, fear gripped the villagers, but she felt a calm rise in her chest. Strength had always been her burden, but in moments like this, it became her gift. As the beast charged toward the fields, Rian appeared among the fleeing crowd. Unlike many of his people, he did not rush back to the safety of the ship. Instead, he grabbed a staff from near the wall and ran toward the danger. Nara's eyes widened. Go back, she called out, her deep voice carrying over the chaos. It is too dangerous. But Rian shook his head. If you stand, I stand with you. The words sent a spark through her chest. For the first time, someone did not try to stop her or call her reckless. Someone chose to fight beside her. The beast slammed against the outer wall, breaking stones apart. Dust filled the air as villagers screamed. Nara moved forward, placing herself between the creature and the people. Her tall frame stood like a shield. She gripped a heavy spear that leaned against the wall and planted her feet firmly in the soil. Rian stood at her side, smaller but fearless. He held his staff tightly, eyes fixed on the beast. "Tell me where to strike," he said. Nara almost smiled at his courage. "Aim for the eyes. Stay low when it charges." The beast roared and lunged forward. Its claws tore at the ground as it swung its head toward them. Nara raised her spear and thrust it forward with all her strength. The point struck the beast's shoulder, forcing it back with a howl of pain. Rian darted to the side, striking at its leg with quick blows. The creature stumbled, but its fury only grew. The villagers watched in shock from behind the walls. Some whispered in fear, others in awe. They had always called Nara too big, too different, yet now her size was the one thing standing between them and destruction. The battle raged on. The beast struck with its massive claws, nearly knocking Rian aside, but Nara caught the blow with her spear, holding firm though the force shook her arms. She pushed back with a roar of her own, driving the creature away from the wall. Rian struck again and again, his smaller frame moving with speed that matched her strength. At last, together they forced the beast toward the open plain. With one final thrust, Nara drove her spear deep into its side. The creature gave a final cry before stumbling and collapsing onto the earth. Dust rose into the air, and silence followed. The villagers slowly stepped out from hiding, their eyes wide as they stared at Nara and Rian standing side by side. The danger had passed, yet the whispers began again. "She is too fierce," one voice muttered. "Not like a woman, more like a beast herself," said another. Nara lowered her spear, her chest heavy. She had saved them once again, yet the words still stung. But before the weight of their judgment could crush her, Rian stepped forward. He looked at her with shining eyes and spoke so that all could hear. "You call her too big, too fierce, too different. But I saw her. She is strong, and strength saved you. She is brave, and bravery saved you. She is not too much. She is perfect." The words rang through the silent crowd. No one replied at first, for they did not know how to answer. Nara stood frozen, her heart pounding, her breath caught in her chest. No one had ever spoken such words for her. No one had ever looked at her the way Rian did in that moment. The whispers faded, if only for a time, and in their place was a quiet respect that even her people could not deny. The day after the battle, the village was calmer, but the memory of the beast still lingered in every corner. Children spoke of the roar, elders warned of danger in the hills, and traders thanked the skies that their stalls had not been destroyed. Yet, no matter how many times the story was told, the ending always had two names: Nara and Rian. For the first time in many years, Nara's strength was spoken of not only as a burden but as a shield. Some called her brave, some called her necessary, but whispers still clung to her name. To her people, she was not yet a hero. She was still different. Nara herself felt restless. She had fought as she always had, giving her strength to protect the village, but Rian's words after the battle kept echoing in her heart. She is not too much. She is perfect. No one had ever said such things to her. No one had ever looked at her with eyes free of judgment. That night, she sat alone outside her stone home, staring at the stars. The silver ship of the humans shone faintly in the distance, its lights blinking like a second constellation. She thought of Rian. His courage had surprised her, but more than that, his kindness unsettled her. He was human, an outsider. Soon he would leave. Why should she believe words that might vanish when the ship lifted into the sky? Her heart told her to trust, but her mind built walls of doubt. As she sat in silence, a soft sound of footsteps approached. She turned and saw Rian walking toward her, carrying a small lantern. His steps were quiet, his face calm. When he reached her, he set the lantern on the stone and sat down beside her without asking. "You sit in the dark," he said gently. "I am used to the dark," Nara replied. Her voice was steady, but inside, her heart was unsteady. "You fought bravely today," Rian said. "I fought as I always do," she answered. "It changes nothing. They still see me as too much." Rian turned his head toward her, his eyes steady. "I do not see you that way." Her chest tightened. She wanted to believe him, yet the years of whispers from her people were heavy chains around her heart. She shook her head slowly. "You are kind, but you do not know me. You see only what you want to see." Rian's brow furrowed. "I see what is in front of me. Strength, courage, and a heart that does not turn away from danger. Do you think that is less than beauty?" Nara fell silent. She had no answer. For a while, they sat quietly, listening to the night wind. The village was calm, the fires of the feast long burned out. Above them, the stars stretched endlessly, bright and cold. At last, Nara spoke again, her voice softer. "When I was younger, I tried to dance with the others. They laughed. I tried to join their songs. They turned away. In time, I learned to live without those things. But sometimes, when I see others together, it feels like a wound that never heals." Rian listened without interrupting. When she finished, he spoke slowly. "Perhaps the wound is not yours. Perhaps it belongs to them, because they could not see what you truly are." His words were like water on dry soil. She wanted to let them sink into her, to let them bring life where only silence had lived. Yet fear held her back. "You will leave," she said. "Your ship will rise into the sky, and I will remain here. Your words will fade, and I will still be what I have always been." Rian looked up at the stars for a moment, then back at her. "Yes, I will leave when my people call me. But that does not mean my words are less true. Sometimes a single truth is stronger than 100 whispers." Nara lowered her gaze, torn between hope and fear. She wanted to believe, but the walls of doubt were strong. She had built them over years to protect herself from pain. Could she tear them down now? The lantern between them flickered, its light casting gentle shadows across the stone. Rian's face was steady, his eyes unwavering. He did not press her, did not demand her trust. He only waited, as if he had endless patience. For the first time, Nara felt the possibility that someone could see her differently, not as too big or too strange, but as whole. The thought scared her, but it also warmed her. When Rian finally stood to leave, he gave her a small nod. "I will see you tomorrow." Nara watched him walk back toward the lights of the village. Her hands clenched around the edge of her cloak. The doubt still circled in her mind, yet the warmth in her chest refused to fade. For the first time in her life, the whispers of others did not feel as heavy. For the first time, she wondered if she could one day silence them, not with force, but with the simple truth of being seen. And though she still sat alone in the night, she no longer felt entirely alone. The days after the battle passed with an uneasy calm. The beast had been defeated, but the hills beyond the village still carried the echo of its roar. Farmers worked with nervous glances toward the horizon, and children played closer to home than before. The elders spoke of sending scouts to watch the hills, yet fear lingered like a shadow. The humans remained in the village, their ship gleaming quietly in the distance. They offered tools, medicines, and knowledge in exchange for trade. Some villagers welcomed them, while others still whispered doubts. Change was always feared, and the presence of outsiders brought questions no elder could easily answer. For Nara, the days felt heavy. She worked as always, carrying stones and guarding the walls, but her thoughts were never far from Rian. His words from the night beneath the stars stayed with her. Sometimes a single truth is stronger than 100 whispers. She wanted to believe it, yet the weight of doubt still pressed hard upon her. That morning, a shout rose from the northern gate. Nara dropped her basket and hurried to the wall. A group of riders approached, carrying the banners of a rival clan from the valley beyond the hills. The riders dismounted with sharp movements, their faces stern. The leader stepped forward, his voice loud and clear. You shelter outsiders in your village. This is a danger to all clans of Rainer. Send them away, or face the cost. The elders gathered quickly. Fear spread among the villagers. The rival clan was known for their strength in battle, and their threats were never empty. The humans stood together, silent but watchful. Rian's gaze moved across the tense crowd, and then to Nara, who stood tall at the gate. An elder stepped forward, his voice trembling. We will discuss this matter. Give us time. The riders gave a final warning and turned their beasts back toward the hills. Their threat lingered in the dust of their departure. The village fell into uneasy silence. Some turned toward the humans, their eyes sharp with fear. If they were not here, one villager muttered, no clan would threaten us. They bring danger, another said. We should send them away. Nara's chest tightened. She looked at Rian, who met her gaze calmly, without fear. The villagers' voices grew louder, their doubts rising like a storm. The elders called for a council that night, and all were told to gather. As the sun set, the village met in the fire circle. The rival clans' demand hung in the air. Some elders argued that the humans brought knowledge and tools that could help the village grow. Others warned that keeping them would bring war. Fear and hope clashed in every voice. Nara sat at the edge, as she always did, listening to the storm of words. Her people looked past her, as if her voice was worth less than the rest. Yet inside her, something stirred. She thought of the beast, of the fear in her people's eyes, and of how Rian had stood beside her without hesitation. She thought of all the years she had been silent, letting whispers decide her worth. When the elders asked if anyone wished to speak, Nara rose to her feet. The crowd fell into a hush. Many eyes widened, some in surprise, others in disapproval. Nara rarely spoke at councils. Her voice was deep but steady. The humans are not a danger. They are our allies. I fought with one of them against the beast. Without him, I may not have lived. Without me, he may not have lived. Together we stood, and together we saved this village. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Some looked uneasy, others doubtful. One elder frowned. And what happens when the rival clan brings war to our gates because of them? Nara lifted her head higher. Then I will stand again. I will use my strength to protect this village, as I always have. But this time, I will not stand alone. The humans have courage. They do not turn away when danger comes. We need such allies, not fewer of them. The villagers shifted uneasily. Her words carried weight, but fear was not easily silenced. At that moment, Rian stepped forward. We do not seek to rule you, he said. We came with open hands. But if others bring war, we will not run. We will fight beside you, as we already have. The firelight glowed on their faces, one tall and strong, the other smaller but unyielding. For the first time, the villagers saw not two strangers, but two defenders. Silence followed, heavy and long. Then one elder spoke quietly. Perhaps strength and courage together are worth more than fear. Not all were convinced, but the council ended without sending the humans away. The decision was clear: if war came, they would face it together. Later that night, Nara stood outside her home, staring at the stars. Rian joined her, as he often did. You chose today, he said softly. Nara turned toward him. I chose to speak. I chose not to let fear silence me. Ryan's smile was small but warm. That choice may have saved more than you know. For the first time, Nara felt the weight of her doubt shift. The walls she had built around her heart still stood, but cracks had begun to show. She had spoken not just for herself, but for her people, and for him. And as the night wind brushed across the quiet village, Nara realized that her strength was no longer only a burden. It was also a choice to protect, to speak, and perhaps one day, to believe she was worthy of more than whispers. The threat of the rival clan did not fade. Days passed, and scouts brought back news that warriors were gathering in the valley beyond the hills. Fires burned in the distance at night, a clear sign of preparation. Fear spread again through the village, heavier than before. Children clung to their parents, and farmers worked with trembling hands. The question was no longer if an attack would come, but when. The elders called another meeting. This time, no one argued whether the humans should stay or leave. The rival clan's choice was already made, and sending the humans away would change nothing. The only path left was to prepare. Nara stood among the people, silent but steady. She had spoken once, and that had been enough to shift the hearts of many. Now they looked at her differently, as if her words and strength carried a weight they had always ignored before. Rian and his people offered to train the villagers. They shared new ways to hold a spear, new ways to build defenses, and tools that made work faster. Some villagers watched with awe, others with doubt, but slowly they learned. Walls were reinforced, traps were set along the paths to the hills, and weapons were sharpened. The air of fear began to turn into something else: determination. At night, when the stars were clear, Nara and Rian often stood together at the edge of the village. The others whispered less now when they saw them. Some even nodded in quiet respect. "You stand as if you were born to guard this place," Rian said one evening. Nara's eyes stayed on the horizon. "It is the only place I have ever known. I will not let it fall." Rian's voice softened. "And you will not stand alone. Not this time." The night of the attack came without warning. Horns echoed from the hills, deep and harsh. Shadows moved like waves down the slopes, carrying the banners of the rival clan. Warriors shouted, their steps shaking the earth. The village drums answered, calling every defender to the walls. Nara took her place at the gate, a heavy spear in her hand. Her tall frame stood like a tower, unshaken even as fear churned in the hearts around her. Beside her stood Rian, his weapon glowing faintly with the strange light of human craft. The rival clan charged, their voices fierce and wild. Arrows darkened the sky. Shields lifted, walls shook, and the first clash of battle roared through the night. Nara moved with power, her strikes heavy and unrelenting. Each enemy that came near the gate felt her strength. Yet she did not fight as one alone. For every strike she made, Rian was there to cover her side, fast where she was strong, sharp where she was heavy. Together they were like two parts of one force, impossible to break apart. The villagers, too, fought with a spirit they had never known before. They were no longer just farmers or builders, they were defenders of their home. The training of the humans showed in their movements, in the traps that broke enemy charges, in the unity of their lines. The battle raged for hours. The rival clan fought fiercely, but the village did not yield. For every wall they climbed, they were thrown back. For every gate they struck, they met Nara's spear and Rian's blade. At the height of the fight, the rival clan leader broke through with his strongest warriors. He was tall, armored, and carried a weapon heavy enough to crush stone. The clash at the gate grew fierce. The leader's blow struck Nara's shield with thunderous force, pushing her back. For a moment, the crowd of enemies pressed hard, and it seemed the gate would fall. But Rian shouted, his voice cutting through the noise. "Nara, together." Something in his words lit a fire in her. She stepped forward again, lifting her spear high. With one mighty strike, she broke through the leader's guard. Rian moved in the same breath, his blade finding its mark. The rival clan leader fell, and with his fall, the enemy's strength began to break. Shouts of retreat spread among them. One by one, the rival warriors pulled back, their charge collapsing into chaos. The hills echoed with their retreating steps until only silence remained. The village stood battered but unbroken. Smoke rose from broken fences, and wounds were many, but the walls still stood. The people had defended their home, not with fear, but with courage. At dawn, the villagers gathered in the fire circle once more. This time, Nara did not stand at the edge. She stood at the center, with Rian at her side. The elders spoke of bravery, of unity, and of a new path forward. One elder turned to her. "You carried us through fear. You stood when others could not. Today, no one will call you too much, or too big, or unfit for love. Today, we call you the shield of this village." The people cheered, their voices rising like the sun itself. For the first time, Nara felt no weight of shame pressing on her. She had fought not only for them, but for herself. Later, when the crowd had gone, she and Rian walked to the quiet edge of the fields. The sky was bright, the air fresh with the promise of peace. "You see," Rian said softly, "I told you once. They called you too big. I called you perfect. And now they see it too." Nara looked at him, her heart steady but full. She had spent her life believing she was a burden, yet in the end, her strength had been her gift. And in Rian's eyes, she saw not doubt or fear, but truth. The war was over, but something new had begun. And as the sun climbed higher, Nara knew that for the first time, she was not standing alone. She was standing at the beginning of a new dawn for her people, for the humans, and for herself.